Story time of how I found out my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. My boyfriend and I had been together for 2.5 years. His family loved me and my family loved him and they expected us to get married. Well, last year when COVID started, we were actually in different countries, so we didn't see each other for 3 months. During those 3 months, we FaceTimed 4 times a day, and we were always texting. He happened to be quarantining in our hometown, so both of our families were in the same place. I was quarantined in a different country. One day my cousin calls me and tells me that she met a really nice guy on a dating website. I was so happy for her because she had had bad luck with guys. Every single week, her and I would catch up on the phone and she would tell me how much she liked this guy, and how amazing their dates were, and how amazing he was in bed, how sweet and considerate he was. I couldn't be happier for her. Well, when I finally get back home, my boyfriend is super distant and cold. So naturally, I called my cousin and complained. She told me to give him space. She said I should just leave him alone. And so like an idiot, I did leave him alone. One day my cousin calls me and tells me to come over for dinner. When I got there, my boyfriend's car was parked in her garage. I thought it was just her nice way of trying to get us to talk. I walk in and catch them doing the dirty on the couch. Come back for part 2. So I walk in on my cousin and my boyfriend doing the dirty on her couch. They quickly get up from the couch and get dressed. Of course, by that time, I'm in hysterics. I'm crying and yelling. My boyfriend instantly got on his knees and begged me for forgiveness. I went up to my cousin and I punched her right in the face. She wasn't expecting that. And I said, well, this is the guy that you've been dating, isn't it? She said yes, and that she was just trying to find the best way to tell me. And so she just thought the best way to tell me was to get me to walk in on her and him doing the dirty. I punched her again. My boyfriend came to her rescue though. Instantly went into hero mode, which made me even angrier, so I punched him too. I stormed out of her house and went back to my house. Well, I told my parents everything. And my dad went over to my uncle's house, my cousin's dad, and he told him everything. She was about to turn 19, so he took away her phone and her car. And I get a phone call from my ex, come back for part 3. So my lying, cheating ex calls me and explains to me why he actually slept with my cousin. He said that he was so lonely and that he didn't know what to do, and that the closest thing to me he could find was my cousin. Right, as if that was any comfort to me. He said I should be grateful that I didn't cheat with someone else. I told him he had totally betrayed my trust and that I could never ever trust him again. And then he confessed that she was pregnant and that his parents wanted them to get married. He said he just wanted to give me a heads up. Then he said that we could still be together but just not tell anyone, so basically he wanted me to be his side piece. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of his mouth. It was like I didn't know this man. Guess what I did? I recorded the entire conversation. So I went straight to my cousin and I let her listen to it. She was so shocked. She couldn't believe that he would offer to have me as a side chick. Well, I also let my uncle listen to it. He went to my ex's house and beat him up. Honestly, that made me sad, but he deserved it. They now have a baby and he's gained 50 pounds. Trust your instincts, girl, and always record your conversations. Also, how cute are my nails?
Story time about how I hooked up with my stepbrother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My dad and I moved to a new town after he got divorced from my mom. The plan would be that I would split my time with my mom and my dad. Now, with the divorce, I actually got really depressed and it really did affect me. Also, I had just turned 18 at the time and I didn't really want to go to college, so I didn't know what to do with my life. My mom asked me if I wanted to go on a trip to Europe with her and I said yes. So my mom and I traveled for about 2 months. When I got home, I decided to go spend time with my dad for a few months. Well, guess what? He already had a new girlfriend. And of course, this affected me really, really badly. And my mom too. Her and I were both surprised that he moved on so quickly. His new girlfriend was okay. She was much younger than my mom, but still older than me. But here's the thing, she had 4 kids. She invited me and my dad to come over for dinner so that we could get to know her kids a bit better. Mind you, I had never met them at this point. I had just gotten back from Europe. So I go over to their house for dinner, and as soon as I walk in, I am greeted by the 2 most beautiful guys I have ever seen in my entire life. They were both in their early 20s, and like I said, I was 18. The other 2 kids were teenagers. Throughout the dinner, I couldn't stop staring at both of these guys. I was really trying not to be obvious, but I had just never seen such beautiful guys. It turns out one of them was actually a model and the other one was a bodybuilder. So you can imagine what they might have looked like. Also, throughout the dinner, they kept making eye contact with me. It was almost like they were competing. After dinner, my dad and I went back to his place. This is when my dad asked me what I really thought of his girlfriend. And I told him that I didn't think he should have moved on that quickly, but at the same time, she was actually a good person. She obviously cared about her kids, and they had a pretty good life. That's when my dad told me that he was going to ask her to marry him. They had not been together very long, but I said, okay. Of course, my dad asked me to plan the whole thing with him. He proposed, and of course, she said yes. And this is when it hit me. These 2 really attractive guys were now going to be my stepbrothers. Awkward. This also meant that I started hanging out more and more at their house. My dad and I would go over for dinners, we would all spend the day in the pool, and basically just hang out. And this meant that I started getting to know my stepbrothers a little better. Right away, I could tell that they were starting to flirt with me while we were all together and separately. course, I was totally single, so I was like, well, you know, whatever. After dinner one night, my dad asked me if I was interested in one of them. And I was like, no, Dad. He told me that I couldn't stop staring at the guys and that I needed to calm down. Oh my God. I was totally blushing and I told him that nothing was going to happen and not to worry. I decided to put some space between me and the guys. One of them actually decided to reach out on Instagram and ask me why I was being so cold. Obviously, I didn't tell him that my dad told me to stay away from them, so I just pretended like I didn't know what he was talking about. That's when he asked me if I wanted to join him and his friends to go to the movies. I couldn't resist and I said yes. While we were watching the movie, he actually grabbed onto my hand and kissed it. And he kissed me. That's when my stepbrother grabbed my hand and kissed me in the movie theater. I was totally shocked. I knew that he had been flirting with me, but I didn't think that he was going to take it that far as to kiss me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. By the way, we were with two of his other friends. So these guys knew that I was his stepsister. After the movie, we all went back to his car and they drove me home. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. Obviously, I was already falling in love with him. I mean, he was so cute, so nice, and he liked me. The following day, my dad and I went over to his girlfriend's house, aka the mother of my stepbrother. That's when my stepbrother came up to me and grabbed my hand. I pulled it away as soon as I could because I thought someone had seen us. Luckily, the coast was clear. He took me to his bedroom and we just made out, while the rest of the family is downstairs having food. After about 10 minutes, we decided to go back downstairs. My stepbrother sat next to me and underneath the table, he kept grabbing my knee. I was terrified that someone would see this. I mean, it's almost like he didn't care if we got caught. After that, my dad and I went home. And about 30 minutes after we got home, my stepbrother calls me and tells me that he's out front. I told him there was no way I could let him in and that he should just go home. And before I knew it, he had snuck in through my window. This is when I realized that I needed him to calm down because if we got caught, my dad would get really upset. I told him that he shouldn't have done that and that he needed to go home. That's when he confessed that he was in love with me. I mean, we had known each other for a few months, but we had only kissed like twice. He told me from the moment he set his eyes on me, he couldn't stop thinking about me. And he told me that him and his stepbrother actually fought over who would get to date me. I was actually flattered, but also concerned. That's when he told me that we should just date and we shouldn't care what our parents think. At first I said no, but then he kept trying to convince me. Suddenly, my dad knocks on my door and asks me who I'm talking to. Part 3 is up. As my stepbrother is confessing to me that he's in love with me, my dad knocks on the door. My stomach sank really quick. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. My dad knocks on the door and asks me who I'm talking to. That's when my stepbrother runs into my closet and just hides. I opened the door and explained to my dad that I was on the phone with a friend. He said okay and just left. But I could tell that he was suspicious. I let my stepbrother out of the closet and told him to leave. That's when he said that he wanted to stay over. Oh my God, I could have just died at that moment. That's when my dad opens the door and catches him. That's when my dad chased him around the house and told him to leave. I was beyond mortified. Oh, and I forgot to mention, my dad and my stepmom were already married. So he calls her and tells her everything that happened. Of course, I denied that he and I did anything, but my dad was not believing me. He told me that while I still lived under his roof, I had to follow his rules. And that meant not dating my stepbrother. The very next day, my stepbrother calls me and asks me to move in with him. He told me that we should get our own apartment and that way we can be happy together. Honestly, I didn't even know what to say because I wasn't in love with him like he said he was in love with me.
Have you found love just yet? I heard you got no friends. Please know that I've been missing you. We are a little bit different now. That's okay, we needed to find our ground and go our separate ways. Cause we grew apart and got older. Happiness was just round the corner, so we drifted away.